we're all influenced by people in our lives, right? And I think that's for the most part a good thing. It depends on who is in your life and who is influencing you. People that I think of that kind of allowed me to even consider something crazy like this transition from orthopedic surgery to being a tech entrepreneur were first my parents. Tell my younger self, continue to have the courage to not feel boxed in by the expectations of kind of the world that we live in. Continue to have the courage to explore that and continue to be curious. I think that was something that allowed me to even consider this, and I think that's something that's kind of continued to help me kind of in this new career, is that curiosity.
I'm Art Blanchford, and this is Life in Transition. Welcome back to this episode of the Life in Transition podcast. I'm really excited, and even so excited, we've been talking for 10 minutes before I hit the record button, to have with us today Dr. Matthew Jones, who is a former orthopedic surgeon and is now a tech entrepreneur after going through major transitions in almost every area of his life in 2022. Matt, really excited to have you on the Life in Transition podcast.
Thank you so much, Art. It's a pleasure to be here.
So jumping in, and maybe it's those ones we talked about in 2022, maybe it's something else, but what would you consider to be one of the most impactful transitions that you've been through in your life, Matt?
Yeah, so let's just dive into that one right there, Art. That's the one that's certainly the most memorable at this point. And it was a result of moving from Chicago to Denver, which is where my wife grew up, and that occurred in 2022. That was one major transition, as most people know. What do they say, that moving cross country is ranked as the second or the third most stressful thing in life? You know, I think behind divorce and death or something like that.
Yeah, moving is definitely one of the major ones.
Art, you just experienced that as a guy who moved from Nashville to Florida, and so You're right in the middle of this, you know. So this will be something I'm sure you'll be talking about over the next several months. For us, you know, it was really weird because, as you know, a lot of times people move cross country or internationally because of their job, right? And many times, they're asked to move. This is not a decision that they make, or it's not, you know, they don't do this voluntarily. For us, this was our decision. You know, it's not like my wife or my job kind of moved us to Denver. This was a decision that we made. And yet, and I can kind of go into some of the details about it, but I think it was the hardest thing that we've done.
Yeah. And I want to make a point here, because this is a mistake a lot of people fall into, Matt, is to think because it's really difficult, it's bad. Mm-hmm. And I just want to disavow that statement, right? It's like doing something that's really difficult or really hard, especially if you choose it yourself, can be beautiful as well, can be really wonderful, right? And I just think, I know I get stuck in that a lot, like thinking, oh, this is really difficult, this is really hard, therefore it's bad.
Right.
And that's just not the case. I had a story. I remember when I was running, the second time I was running the Shanghai Marathon, and it was right at freezing. Oof. And the air was like 500 air quality, like off the charts. Like I literally was running the marathon with a mask on.
Wow.
And it's sleety and rainy, and at about mile 17, I'm just like, this is so hard. I start crying. I have to take my mask off because I can't breathe through my mask anymore. So then I'm breathing this super polluted air. It's almost stinging my eyes and stinging my lungs. And I thought, this is so hard. And then I thought, but it's not bad. I chose it. Mm-hmm. And this is, you know, what it is. And it just shifted my whole mindset. Like at work, I think, if it's hard, if this is a hard day, then it's a bad day. No, it's not. And so you choose something and you choose it, and it still can be really difficult and really painful even, and still really good at the same time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's been the story of my life and we'll get into this, Art, but my life has been amazing, right? So I've not, probably relative to a lot of people, I've not had a hard life, but I think I learned pretty early on that difficulty doesn't mean bad. And
good for you. Good for you. So what made this one difficult? Like when you moved from Chicago, this is 2022. So you have 3 really young kids at this time, and, you know, wife that's working, you're working. You're
Yeah.
both doctors,
And this
and
goes
you
into so there's, we think about it as three major transitions, since we're talking
at the
about
same
life
time.
in transition that all occurred right on top of each other.
So
So,
something Toyota would never do with their Kaizen systems, right? Maximum
yes,
2 changes at a
right,
time.
right. So we broke that rule, right? Um, so it was one moving across
Yep.
country, and it wasn't. And I think this is something that we didn't really think about at the time. I think one person moving cross country difficult. Two,
Right.
maybe a a couple moving cross country. I would say probably likely harder. Moving a
Right.
family across country even harder. And I think that was something we didn't really think about that until after it was in retrospect where we were like, okay, we knew that this probably would be something that would be difficult. Um, we didn't appreciate the difference between moving an individual versus a couple versus a family.
Yeah. What did you notice as the main difference there, Matt?
Well, I think it was just that you don't have one person that's in a transition. You in our case, you had five.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and so number one, I think that the difficulty in that early 2022 was moving. Number two
Mm-hmm.
was a career change for me, and we'll get into this some. But moving, from working as an orthopedic surgeon for 10 years, and then starting a new career as a tech entrepreneur, and
Yeah.
so that was a radical shift. It was a
Huge
radical
change.
pivot, and then
Can
my
I
wife.
highlight something you said there as well? Because I want to point this out. You said
Sure.
working as an orthopedic surgeon instead of I was an orthopedic surgeon, especially doctors. And I've had a lot of them on the show are really, and I was this way too. I am a business executive, right? I am a doctor. And I just
Yes.
noticed that it's very different. Like, and maybe that's why you were able to let go of it as well, as I was working as an orthopedic surgeon. It wasn't defining me 100% as who I am.
Huh. That's so cool. I bet you're exactly right. Actually, you wonder if you could, and you probably do a good job as you listen for this. Is you hear the people who say, "Well, I was an orthopedic surgeon," or "I am an
Right.
orthopedic surgeon," and then
Right.
huh? So without
So
maybe,
I just highlight that I think, I think you're the first doctor that I've had on that's put it that way. I was working.
maybe
As
because
an orthopedic
maybe
surgeon.
because I'm a recovering doctor.
Yeah, but I think that's really great to recognize that you aren't, there's more to you than the DR in front of your name.
Yes.
Right.
And I
that's
agree.
great.
I mean, most of my friends, as you might imagine, the people who run in your social circles also happen to be docs, and that is core to their identity.
Yes. Yes. Yeah,
And for the most part, not necessarily a bad thing. I mean,
yeah.
well, you may disagree. I'll say I guess I can see why that's the case,
Yeah.
and that's why we like to make fun of these guys sometimes. We have some friends who are in their 60s and 70s and even 80s, and they're still practicing,
Yeah.
because it's like, would you need the money? No. But what else would I do?
Yeah.
That's,
And it is, we do need something to do. And if they feel really purpose in it, good for them. If they feel like they can't stand to be alone in the stillness of their own thoughts, then they haven't taken their spiritual journey yet. And they're avoiding that by staying busy. Right. So it just depends. It's nothing either good or bad, but how we use it.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So I was working as an orthopedic surgeon and then pivoted to this. And so that was number two. The third major transition was my wife. She's also an internist, worked at Northwestern in Chicago, primarily did sports medicine, primary care sports medicine when she was working there. And then when we moved here, her job shifted pretty significantly to doing more primary care, working more as a general practitioner, as an internist. And so that was also a big shift. And so, again, I think it was this combination of those three things that were all kind of stacked together, and maybe a fourth again that I mentioned that we didn't really appreciate until we kind of thought back on it, was the fact that it was an entire family that was moving. And so what happened, Art, is that there was a little bit of this cycle of guilt that we got into, because my wife and I, her name is Emily, we were like, wait a second, we wanted to move to Denver. This was not some, and it's a cool place, as probably many people know. we were very fortunate to move to a great house in in a great neighborhood. There was a lot of like, and then we were like, but we are miserable. And so then you start to like feel this kind of cycle of guilt a little bit for like, well, wait, we wanted this and we're miserable, and
What's
and then
going on?
that was, so we call 2022, at least the first 8 months, the dark ages.
And what made it miserable? Like, how were you feeling? If you put a little bit more definition on miserable, and what was, it doesn't seem like you're still miserable. What was the cause of it, or what do you think was causing the miserableness?
Yes, right. The misery. Yes. So one of the things that just kind of happened is that all three kids then started getting sick all at different times. So I think we're in a new place. We don't have many friends yet, so we don't have that built-in support system, which is something I think, Art, you may experience in your new location in Florida. Something that I'm sure you probably already thought about, but I didn't just encourage you to, just think about that. You have to start over a lot of times with a support system, with friends, even little like basic things like, okay, I need to get to the pharmacy kind of now. Where's a pharmacy, or what, I mean, like little things that you normally just, and you don't have to think about. So it was this combination of, we have sick kids. We also have some family here. M's family lives around, but then when you have a sick kid, you don't really want to ask your family to help watch the kid.
The in-laws come in and get sick themselves, right?
Right. So that was awkward. And so then, one of us is kind of scrambling last minute. Okay, kid can't go to daycare or whatever today. All right. So then
who's going to take care of them? Right? Who's going to call in sick to their job? So to speak. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That, I would say, if I had to kind of just look back and think of one kind of reason for the misery in the midst of this transition, was this unexpected sickness of these three kids. And it was nothing ever serious. I mean, I think we ended up going to the ER once, so it was never, of the, let's call it maybe the 20 times that those kids kind of got sick. It was just pretty basic, but it was one of those things where it's kind of always last minute, right? You wake up in the morning, whatever you were going to had going on that day, that plan gets changed. And so I would say that would probably be the number one contributor, just to and I'm a man of routine, and I think I struggle with unexpected surprises sometimes. I like to tell people that I don't mind positive surprises, but I really struggle with negative surprises, and that was always a negative surprise. So I would have to say I did not handle that great at times.
Well, not surprising that the kids are sick. They're in a new environment, right? And their immune systems are just developing, right? I mean, we moved so many times and twice across the ocean with kids.
Yes.
With young kids. And
did you experience that much as you got moved from one kind of, definitely ecosystem to another? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Definitely did. And then when you live internationally, you're traveling back and forth internationally all the time too. And what we saw is that myself as a prime example, if we kept ourselves really healthy and rested, we were fine. We could handle whatever was on the planes with 25,000 other people and airports and different environments to some extent. If you didn't keep yourself healthy, then it was really, if you were run down a little bit anyway or stressed about something, so your immune system was a little low. The one exception I would say to that is I think the E. coli, there's a lot of E. coli in the world, but we're not used to it. We only have the 11 strands in our area. And if you go to some other area, that I think no matter how healthy you are, it'll get you until you've adapted to it. Right? But yeah,
I went on a mission trip this summer to Mexico, and I experienced that personally, unfortunately.
Yes, unfortunately, twice Mexico has gotten me with that, and once Korea. Once China. So yeah, I've had my share. I travel with Cipro now.
Okay.
But anyway, so these transitions, so you get there and now you're you're miserable. Now you're not working as an orthopedic surgeon anymore, right? As soon as you moved out there, you did not start.
That's right.
You did not continue orthopedic surgeon. Where is the status of this business? Has you already started it, or was it still an infancy phase, or what?
It was. So I had already started it in Chicago. So I was about maybe 9 or 10 months into it.
Okay.
And so it was at that, what I would call a toddler stage, you know. It was a rambunctious toddler at that stage. So I had been doing both ortho, and I had started this company. The company is called Towlos, Towlos. I had started this company in Chicago, and I've been doing that for maybe 10 months. And
I give us the one sentence, your 60-second elevator pitch on what this company is.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. So Towlos is a trailer sharing marketplace. So just think of Airbnb, but rather than homes, we sling trailers.
Okay. Or neuro, if you get even a little closer to like the rental car side.
Yes,
neuro.
Exactly. Turo.
Turo.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Turo. Turo is a peer-to-peer car rental marketplace, and we're basically Turo for trailers.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Yeah. Cool.
So it's and we focus on, most people think of kind of RV campers or travel trailers. That's not our focus. We actually focus on, and this gets back to the motorsports art, which we could get into since we both kind of have an unhealthy love for cars.
Right.
This is we sling car haulers, enclosed trailers, dump trailers, horse trailers, boat trailers, other specialty trailers, motorcycle trailers. So that's kind of our niche.
So if I want to go run the Tail of the Dragon and I live in Kansas, I can throw my M3 or my Miata on one of your trailers.
Get yourself a Towlos trailer, man. Yeah.
Or if I wanted to go to South Dakota for the big Harley convention, I could do the same thing if I'm living in Tennessee or Florida or whatever.
It's so interesting. So we have, I can't believe this. This opened my eyes. So we have guys that are going to Sturgis every year, right? And so I think that's in August. And so we have guys. I actually just talked to a guy named Ron in Phoenix a couple days ago who's renting a trailer in Phoenix, one of our Towlos trailers for Sturgis next year, and I was like, well, hang on. It's like I kind of like.
You're planning August the 26th already.
Yeah, it's like, whoa. So these guys are like, and this has happened several times. And so it's like, oh yeah, we got to kind of line up our trailer. We're getting, and I thought, are you talking April? I thought for sure he made a mistake. He was like, no, I'm talking about August of 2026. So
but I think about that. Sturgis is by far the biggest motorcycle rally probably in the world. So everybody, there's only so many trailers out there, and if you want to rent one, right, and everybody else that has one is using it to go to Sturgis unless they're taking a year off, right? So it sort of makes sense.
It's the supply problem. I'm sure you've dealt with that for for years and years in the automotive industry, is like balancing the supply and the demand. And so, as you pointed out, that right there is a kind of a micro example of a supply problem.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
No, exactly.
It was so fascinating. So you're right. Mm-hmm.
No, go ahead.
Well, that's kind of what. So Towlos, we kind of created Towlos to basically serve two needs, right? Since it's a marketplace, you can the first and obvious one, the one for us was hey, we needed not just a trailer, but we needed the right trailer, and that's it's not quite, it's certainly not nearly as universal as homes like Airbnb or cars like Turo, but it's amazing how big of an industry this is, and you right away established a couple use cases. One other one that we've run into quite a bit is these guys that soup up their Jeeps. They get these big oversized Jeeps. Yeah. Those things aren't traveling down the interstate. Those things are on a trailer. So that's the.
I had that experience actually. I had a little M2. It wasn't even M2. It was M235 convertible, like these little BMWs, and I want to go up to the Tail of the Dragon. Mm-hmm. Which, if you haven't been to, that definitely needs to be on your bucket list, man.
It's on my bucket list. I've not driven it. My dad drove it last year.
It's so cool. It's so great. I've been on a whole bunch of different cars. Miatas, Minis. I think Miatas are the best there. BMWs.
Is that right? Because it's super
because they're so light, and there's 300. I want to say 317 switchbacks in 11 miles.
Wow.
If I remember exactly right.
That sounds right.
but I remember, so I had 3 young kids, school age kids, and we had the big Yukon, and I wanted to go, and I wanted to take the family, and they're like, we could drive separate. I was like, hey, I'll just get a trailer and put it behind the Yukon and put the BMW on the trailer.
Sure.
And I screwed up the bottom of the BMW on this U-Haul car hauler because they're not meant for performance cars, and I tore some stuff off the bottom of my.
You're speaking our language.
Bottom of my BMW. So
we should have you be a pitch man.
Yeah, the business case for that is really good. So at this point, so you're leaving Chicago, you're 9-10 months into the business. It's a toddler. Are you profitable already? Or are you still burning money?
Still burning cash. And in fact, we're still burning cash now.
And you're giving up a job where you're making hundreds of thousands of dollars at least.
That's right.
And you have young kids. So this is not something you do lightly, to be honest.
Yeah.
So what gave you the courage to do that, man?
Yeah. So this was probably a decision 5 years in the making, right?
Okay.
This is not something that you just kind of do flippantly. I still, I have a ton of respect for. So in the medical community, we as orthopods get made fun of that say, well, you're not really a doctor, you're just an orthopedic surgeon.
The only doctors I need.
Yeah, right. Because we tend to be a certain personality type, and we in some ways we're glorified carpenters, but it's an incredible profession, and it's something that I think it is hard to walk away from. But Em told me, she was like, hey, you used to say probably 2 or 3 times a week, you would say something to the effect of, I'm just not sure how much longer I can do this. And I would just, I think I would just kind of, I would say that, and I probably said, I guess I would say it. I don't really remember saying it, or at least certainly not that frequently, but she's like, yeah, I would hear that probably 2 or 3 times a week. And so this was in, let's call it, so I practiced for 10 years after finishing fellowship at UCLA. And probably maybe for those, let's call it those last 5 years. And so this was a decision that was a long time in the making. And I always thought, Art, that I would kind of scratch that entrepreneurial itch by being a consultant for Smith & Nephew or Stryker or Synthes, some of these orthopedic device companies. I actually was involved with helping them design some of the rotator cuff implants or some of the ACL fixation devices that we use in the knee. And that was pretty fun and pretty cool to be able to kind of be a part of the kind of the leading edge, some of the innovation that occurs. But that is one of the things I actually love about medicine, is that it is an evolving field. I guess probably quite a few other professions out there. And so what you were taught in med school, it wasn't, maybe there was some, there would be some evolution into residency, maybe even some additional evolution in fellowship and beyond. And so there is a part that's tough for patients sometimes to deal with, because it is a changing profession. And I think
changing for the better, especially my experience with orthopedics, especially. I first visited an orthopedic surgeon when I was 6, 1977.
Okay.
And my experience for the next 25 years or 30 years, and I visited him a lot, was, I have a hammer, so you're the nail.
Right.
Right. I will fix you with my surgery. And my parents, when I was a kid, were very reluctant. They never let me get cut on, even though a lot of orthopedic surgeons at that time wanted to cut on me. I had a stark change. I had a pretty big break.
Which actually I would say is probably, without knowing all the details, that was probably not a bad decision.
Yeah, exactly.
On your parents' part.
Like the one that was really like where they really wanted to cut on me. I broke 4 metatarsals in my foot when I was 12. And they wanted to put screws and everything. And my parents fought them tooth and nail. And they said, okay, we'll compromise. And you come back in 3 days and 7 days and we'll x-ray and see if they're starting to heal.
Okay.
And I ran the Grand Canyon last year, rim to rim to rim at 53, right? With no issues. But what changed, like I remember, so this is now 5 or 6 years ago, I busted the humerus in 4 pieces.
Ooh.
In a mountain bike crash. Yeah, it was pretty intense.
Proximal humerus up by your shoulder?
Yeah, right. I took the head off, the ball joint off, and broke the ball joint in 3 pieces. And I went to see 2 orthopedic surgeons,
Mm-hmm.
and both of them said more or less the same thing. Listen, it's not my job to fix you. Orthopedic surgeon. It's not my job to fix you. It's my job to make sure your body's in a condition where it can heal itself.
Mm.
And even though it's so out of place, we think if you're willing to put up with the pain, which we highly recommend, and you can start doing physical therapy, arm circles and stuff right now, even though it hurts incredibly badly, we think it'll pull itself back in place. And both of them said more or less the same thing. Shocked me, quite frankly, because of my experience in younger life with wanting to be cut on all the time. And so I had, that one, it didn't get all the way back in place. One of the pieces stayed, it was 10 millimeters out. It stayed probably 4 millimeters out. And so I'm missing 12 degrees of motion, but I still did Ironman afterwards. So it was good enough. Right. And I didn't have to go through surgery. And he said, you think this is tough? Recovery from surgery is going to be that much tougher.
Right.
So I think there's been, let me put it this way. In my experience with orthopedic surgeons, there's been more evolution in mindset there than in a lot of other places. In medicine. So I'll just give a little prop to the orthopedic surgeons that I've dealt with in the last 5 years, which has been 4 or 5 of them, have been much better to work with.
Okay. Yeah. So you did not have any shoulder surgery there. You elected to kind of treat that, what we call non-operatively.
Yeah. And at the advice of 2 orthopedic surgeons.
Right. Well, so this is the weird thing. So, and I would say I would like to think that that's probably that conversation is a reflection of the evolution of probably medicine in general. Is that certainly in the United States, I think we have kind of adopted a more of what we call shared decision making, where we act as a bit of more of a partner, and we try to have a dialogue with the patients. And this is one of the things that, again, I think that I loved and that I've that I've adopted in my current job in the startup world is having conversations, listening to, at that time were my patients. Now it's listening to our customers, listening to our clients, right? Trying to understand and listen for pain. What I did as an orthopod was try to help improve or eliminate pain, and in many ways I'm doing the same thing right now.
Right. It may be on a different point of the scale. Maybe people are going toward pleasure. How can I maximize pleasure? How can I get to Sturgis without damaging my Harley?
There you go. Right? Exactly. Yeah.
This episode of the Life and Transition Podcast is brought to you by Midlife Transition Mastery. If you have reached midlife and you are successful, you have checked all the boxes. You've done everything you thought you should do, and especially pleasing everybody else, doing what you think everyone else needs you to do. But you still feel like something's missing. Like you're coming up empty, feeling alone, feeling misguided or lost. Midlife Transition Mastery Explorer community is for you. Here we will build authentic community. We will learn about the 8 steps to mastering midlife transition. And we will learn and execute living life with no regrets in our second half. Please check out the community on lifeintransition.online/MLTM, Midlife Transition Mastery. And I look forward to seeing you around the fire in this community.
But if you show up in Sturgis and the motorcycle is damaged because it wasn't the right trailer, that's painful.
That's right.
That's a type of pain. But I think you're right. I think your experience is probably a reflection of the way that medicine has transitioned or evolved, I think, over time. And so I remember having lots of conversations. So that we would take care of a lot of people with we call them proximal humerus fractures. It sounds like yours was like a 3-part or a 4-part fracture. They tend to break on certain kind of fracture lines that, and so a lot of times, and this was probably your dominant shoulder. Are you right-handed?
Yeah, right-handed.
Yeah,
right
exactly.
Shoulder,
So this was your dominant arm, and so that's
and
something we always take into consideration.
Crash,
and when you and so it's interesting. This is another thing I love about the human body is it has an amazing ability to get broken and then to heal, and it might not look the same. Your X-ray will never look like your left shoulder looks.
That's right.
But your function is probably, it sounds like it's not that dissimilar. You've lost a little bit of motion maybe in certain degrees, but we talk about functional motion versus non-functional motion. Just the fact that you can reach up and touch your neck behind you with one arm and you can't do it with the other arm. Does that
Right.
affecting you day to day?
Yeah.
Can you not sleep at night because of that shoulder? Those are very different questions, right?
Yeah.
And so
I figure if I can do pull-ups and I can swim a mile or more, shoulders good enough.
Good. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's interesting to kind of hear that you've had that experience. So you've been a friend of orthopedic surgeons for a long time.
Yeah, maybe an enemy and now a friend.
Yeah, right.
No, it's I give some props there where props are due. Absolutely.
So back to
you're making this change,
profession. Yeah. So this was something that
I've known you can't do it. What was it that made you feel like you couldn't keep going? Like when you're saying to your wife 2 or 3 times a week, like, I'm not sure how much longer I can do this.
Yeah.
What was the burnout ingredient?
Yeah. Great question. So this is nuanced, but I would, in my head, I kind of separated the specific role of orthopedic surgery from American medicine. Okay. And so, in general, the way that American medicine had kind of just changed, even just over 20 years, 2 decades, short period of time since I started med school, which was in 2002, it had changed pretty drastically with the way that insurance was playing a much larger role in dictating, what we kind of recommended. There was a lot of our kind of our autonomy and some of our professionalism that had been stripped away.
Yes.
Partly for the better, right? There's now there's a protocol, and if you have this amount of pain on a scale of 1 to 10, then you get this medicine. And so there's some of this, protocols serve a purpose, right?
Absolutely.
And sometimes that's great, but then they also strip away some of the nuance, some of the autonomy, some of the decision making that I think a lot of docs feel these days is because they're now tied to some evidence-based protocol that may work for that bell curve, but they may not. And so that was something I think I struggled with. You go to you go into medical school because you want to do your best. You want to use the capacities that the training, the intellect that you've been given to do your best to help patients, and then you're dealing with protocols. That'd be one example. Protocols, insurance. The other one is the kind of the corporatization of medicine. If you look at the number of administrators to physicians over the last 20, 30 years, you'll just see a massive increase in just kind of this middle layer of bureaucracy. And that, I think, has really driven a wedge between the patient and the doc. And that was hard. So I guess
become more like a line worker in a factory than a small business, caring for a small business entrepreneur or a pastor or something like doctors used to be.
100%. That's right. Yeah. And so my wife, sometimes she feels like she's, standing behind a deli counter or something. And she's like, okay, which meat do you want today? We got turkey, we got ham, we got an MRI here, we got a PT, we got some medicine, we got surgery. What do you, and so some of that is just the way that it's gone. And so, she'll recommend one thing and she'll get a lot of pushback from patients. And again, there's this balance between being overly paternalistic and then I guess what might be the other side of it, where it's just like, it's almost too much of a partnership, where it's like
too much of a free for all. Like, oh, I want to try cherries for that.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, you try cherries for 6 months, and if you don't die, come back and see me. Right.
Right.
You don't want to go that far, but it's something I have a lot of experience with, and a lot of heartburn with, actually.
Okay.
In general, I've seen that curve as well as a consumer. I had better access to high quality Western medicine in Shanghai.
Wow.
Than I did in Nashville. Healthcare city, right?
Tell me a little bit about that, because So you
Yeah.
had
So
access to high quality Western
Western. So these are
medicine.
doctors educated in Europe,
Mm-hmm.
US, or
Mm-hmm.
Australia. Very well board certified surgeons, internists, everything
In Shanghai.
in Shanghai
Mm-hmm.
that I could see that day or the next day, that would answer the phone when I called, that would leave me a message, or act on my message when I called.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I never went more than a day or two to get an appointment. And
Wow.
these are very quality, same thing with even dentistry. I had braces while I was in China as an
Mm-hmm.
adult
Mm-hmm.
because it was reasonable priced and it was very good, Filipino American doctor.
Right.
So it just was very frustrating when I got back here and I saw that. Like, I had a very smart doctor as my primary care, but there was several big misses that caused me a lot of suffering because she didn't want to spend the money because she's got this corporate training now, right? To like, well, I don't want to recommend this test for H. pylori because it's $700. And I didn't know what H. pylori was. And I was taking medicine for heartburn for 2 years until one of my Rain Man friends said, oh, by the way, Art, you have H. pylori. That's what's going on with you. I was just reading this book and you have H. pylori. And sure enough, that's what I had. But for $700, the insurance company had spent, I don't know, let's call it $2,000 on medicine for 2 years.
Right.
And me not being right because I didn't take a course of antibiotics because we didn't want to spend a $700 test to realize I picked up H. pylori the last time I was in China. Right. Or the Cipro example that I had before. I come back from Mexico. I recognize I've got E. coli and I need Cipro and call my doctor's office and they're on lunch break and they don't call me back. And by the time I reach them at 4:30, my doctor's out and they won't give me a prescription for Cipro. And I end up in the ER in rural Kentucky, driving to Indianapolis for 6 hours, trying to tell the ER doc that I know what I'm talking about and please just give me Cipro. And 6 hours later, they finally give me Cipro. And then I start feeling better in 30 minutes, which I knew because I've been down that road 3 times before.
Wow.
And my doctor apologized profusely, but still, like, how insane is it that a doctor that knows me and, she said, here, I'm going to give you a prescription that lasts for 15 years. Just always have it with you. Right. And so not that she's a bad doctor, but the system is so effed up, that and again, the insurance company, I'm spending twice as much. We wonder why healthcare is expensive in this country. I spend 6 hours in an ER.
Right.
For the failure of our system to be able to have a nurse practitioner in that office that's not my doctor without seeing me write a prescription for something that they know I know how to use safely and give to me in the afternoon where I can be fine. I have a lot of these type of stories, right? Because I've been all over the world and I push myself pretty hard and I try things and, but it's interesting. And the thing about this, medicine 2.0, if you will, which is just this double blind studies or nothing, compared to what's going to work in this situation for this human being with all the factors, spiritual, emotional, physical, environmental, et cetera. It's very different.
So can you think of one or two things that was the reason that your experience in Shanghai was what it was? Like,
I think
like
mostly
why?
There's 2 things that were really different. One is accessibility. Okay. Right. I don't think they have HIPAA and stuff, crazy stuff that we have here. Right. So the accessibility, the communication was so much easier. You could call somebody and they'd say, oh, they'd give you the information, the nurse or even the receptionist, or they'd say, hold on, let me go ask the doc. And they'd barge into an appointment and just get a real quick, hey, Art's want to know about this. He's the guy that oh, okay. Yeah. Tell him this or have him come in this afternoon at 2:30. So the accessibility, I think, was a big, big part of it. And maybe it was also because I had like gold plated insurance when I was over there, because that's one of the expat things, right? It's like having a VIP, MD VIP over here or something. But I think the accessibility was a big part of it. And then the other part was, I feel like it was not at all patronizing, which I still feel from medicine over here sometimes. They saw me as a peer, but they also weren't afraid to call me on my shit either. Right? I can remember I had a virus on my eye. I was sick and went to do a speech at this automotive company in China and shook 700 hands. Oh. And I was sick. So I probably rubbed my eye, whatever. So my eye's getting red. And I think, well, maybe I have pink eye, and I put a couple drops in. Then I go to the doctor because, on a Saturday or Sunday when I'm back in Shanghai. And she said, listen, you have a virus. It's eating your retina or cornea, eating your cornea.
Cornea. Yeah.
And she said, it's like literally eating your cornea. This is very serious. And she said, listen, I know your type. I deal with you guys all the time. You type A, hard driving executive yahoos. Right. You need to stop right now and listen to me if you want to see out of that eye. This is not something to mess around with. Right. So she she knows me. She sees the professionalism. She knows the drive, but she also is like, this is time not to be relying on Art Blanchford's brain for this.
Right.
You need to, and I had to wear I put antibiotics and injections and wore a patch for like 17 days or something.
Okay.
Right. But she said, don't mess around with this. And it was interesting. So I got back to my eye doctor in the US in the summer, didn't tell him anything. And they said, whoa, you had eye eating bacteria in the last year. We can see it. We can see it.
Evidence of it.
Yeah. Oh. But again, got access right away and had a very, German doctor, maybe that's part of it, very direct, but real conversation, but I really appreciate instead of just regurgitating something I can read on the internet or, but it's specific to my situation. I know you're pushing too hard. You're run down. You have to stop and rest, no travel for the next 3 weeks and blah, 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 blah. Right. Yeah. Because I'm seen and because I have more than 15 minutes.
Yes.
With the doctor. Right.
Well, so that's what I was thinking of. And we can, this would be a whole conversation. So we can move on, but it is about kind of bandwidth. It's like I think there's some real advantages kind of to this holistic approach, right? But when you only have 15 minutes, that's just not possible. And so we don't have if the solution was easy, we'd already be there. So, but just having like you said, like situational awareness, being able to, make a specific nuanced decision, based on this, this specific situation, then having maybe the bandwidth, the time to be able to kind of think about this on maybe a little bit more holistically. I think we in kind of American medicine, at least my observation is that's something that we struggle with a lot. So,
and I would say, just to wrap this up, because we spent a lot of time on it, to give some specific advice, which I've not done on this show before, but to people, if you have a health issue and you're seeing your doctor and you have a sense of something's either right or not right, always seek a second opinion and don't think that there's no way to solve it. I've had lots of things where they say, oh, that's just the way that it is. And I go see somebody else or I go to a functional medical doctor and he says, listen, if you're willing to do the work and really change your habits, we can fix this as well, even though it's medically incurable. So don't, even if it's your PCP that's known you for a long time, ask, what else can we do? What else could this be? Do I need to have another appointment to have more time with you so we can discuss it again? And then go see somebody else as well. There's a lot of this is one thing I've seen pop up. There's a lot of bad urgent care places, but there's a lot of good urgent care places too. And those you can get into. And if you know one that has good doctors, and even if you don't see the same one all the time, you can also get good care there and get a second opinion as well and get another perspective. So don't feel trapped in a diagnosis. This episode of the Life in Transition podcast is brought to you by Transition Mastery Coaching. If you have made it to midlife and you're successful and you are going through transitions in your life, in your business, in your career, or in your organization, and you are looking to master those transitions, to make the most of them, to accelerate into the next phase of your organization or your life, if you're facing, challenges in your business, challenges in your relationship, challenges in your health, and you really want to transition those quickly, I'm here to guide you for that. And I look forward to working with you. And you can sign up for either Pinnacle Transition Coaching or Summit. Please go to lifeintransition.online/MLTM and scroll to see the Summit and Pinnacle Coaching, or reach out to me directly on my email, art@artblanchford.com. And I look forward to connecting with you and helping you to accelerate your transitions to achieve what it is that you want to achieve in the second half in your organization and in your life, so you can live your whole life with no regrets.
And my advice as a doc, and kind of thinking about this on the other side, is I would just advise people. I would agree with Art. I would just advise people, make sure that just be respectful. If you disagree with your PCP or something, or you at least question it, I think I would say just certainly inquire. But be respectful, and then you can seek a second opinion, and you can I agree. I think that's sometimes a great idea, and sometimes it just confirms what maybe the first doc said.
Absolutely.
So I think
but then
that's
you have
helpful.
confidence about that too.
And then sometimes they might uncover something that the other doc would just hadn't thought about or something. So, but I think my advice, and this probably goes without saying, but I guess I'll say it anyway. It's just you don't have to argue with the doc. Don't argue with him, because my wife gets that.
And that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense to argue with anybody, but especially someone who's got 20 times more education in that area than I have.
Who may be, but let's just be honest. They may be. They may have missed something, but rather than kind of arguing, maybe just quietly think, okay, I think I might just pursue a second opinion here. I think that's a great idea. Mm-hmm.
And there's so much. This is a plug for another one of my podcasts, but I had Ellen Langhor on recently, who's a psychology researcher and many times best-selling author at Harvard. And her latest book is called Mind Body: Thinking Your Way to Chronic Health. And so that's a piece that the doctors can't solve for us. Right? That we need to take a certain amount of responsibility ourselves. And she has all kinds of studies. For 40 years, she's been doing off-the-wall studies at Harvard on the effect of our thinking on our health. So that's one that's
fascinating.
We as consumers need to take responsibility for. The first book I read of hers 15 or 20 years ago was called Mindfulness. She's called the mother of mindfulness. Not meditation, but being present in your life, like paying attention. And one of the studies she did recently is just people that have chronic issues or chronic pain, uncurable things, that just by naming it, setting an alarm and naming how they're feeling, what's the pain or discomfort on a scale of 1 to 10, and is it better or worse than last time they looked at it, and why they think that might be the case. Just that process improved the symptoms more than any medicine.
Wow.
Just by being aware, by paying attention. And the reason that you give yourself why it might be better or worse could be complete BS from a medical perspective. It doesn't matter. The mind will give it a reason. And then if you do more of that or have more of that, then it makes it better. The placebo effect, which everybody's very familiar with, but who cares if it works?
Exactly.
Right. So she's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. So I don't have an episode was back in September, but
I'll have to listen to that one. Yeah.
It's very interesting.
So
and she has enough data to show that, it blows my mind, and I'm sort of already, I don't know, not in the mainstream of medicine, and it still blows my mind. Yeah. So that's a great conversation, man. I really appreciate that big aside.
Yeah.
But coming back, so now you've known you can't do this for a while, but you're still walking away from it's not, your wife changed careers because it's different going from, specialist to PCP. That's a different career, but you've changed careers like completely.
Right.
And I can imagine in the old school 1950s, father would say, what the hell? I invested all this in you to go to med school and you're throwing it all away. How did you overcome like that? Like in your own mind, what was the process of being like, okay, I'm going to go do this startup? What made that worth it, that trade-off?
So I think it does. We're all influenced by people in our lives, right? And I think that's for the most part a good thing.
Yes. Depends on the people. I can't be good or bad.
Exactly.
For the most part, because we mostly surround ourselves with good people that love us, it's a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I call it the environment of excellence. And so, yeah, you're right. It depends on who is in your life and who is influencing you. But a couple people that I think of that kind of allowed me to even consider something crazy like this transition from orthopedic surgery to being a tech entrepreneur were first my parents. I think my mom and dad.
Kudos to them. Kudos to them. That's awesome, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's hard, right? Because you exactly what you just said, Art, which is, what the hell are you doing? You worked. You worked. We in many docs they give their entire 20s, teens and 20s to this. I mean, I finished training when I was 32, and that's pretty fairly common. And so you work for not only just money, you take out loans for college and med school. And that's something that you can wrap your head around a little bit. What I think people don't do as easily is just wrap your head around starting your career when you're 32 versus starting your career when you're
Right.
22.
And you're
And
starting with
those
a pile
10
of debt.
years are massive, right?
Yeah.
If you're, if you're somewhat smart, and this is a encouragement to all those young listeners out there, is like, live below your means, start investing and saving a little bit of the money that you make when you're young. It's amazing. I mean, we know those investment rules, how those reap dividends when 10, 20, 30 years later, right?
So I'm gonna say one example of that just to smack people in the face.
Okay.
Warren Buffett today is worth 84.5 billion.
Okay.
When he was 65, he was worth $3 billion.
Whoa.
So he's not the best investor that's ever been. He's just the longest.
Yes.
Right, not even close.
Because
to the best.
how are we? Is he in his 90s now?
95 or 96 now.
Uh-huh.
And the number may be a couple years old. I
Yes.
just read it in Morgan Housel's book, but
Okay.
84.5 billion.
Okay.
Of which at that time, all but 3 billion of it came after he turned 65.
That is amazing.
So 3 billion is tons and plenty and
Yes.
whatever, but doing the same thing he'd been doing up until 65 from 15. So he's already been doing it for, 50 years. Mm-hmm. The last 30 years has gone from 3 billion to 85 billion.
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Power of compounding, exponential.
Yes. Right. So being on the right side of the interest equation. Yes.
Yes. Which, of course, starting as an orthopedic surgeon, you're starting on the wrong side.
Yeah. And again, I am
not that's bad.
I'm not complaining for a second. I'll tell you the entire reason that I was able to even kind of actualize or execute upon an idea like, hey, I need the right type of trailer to get to NCM.
Yep.
Even the reason I was able to at least kind of consider that and to put some funds towards that to explore was because I had worked as an orthopedic surgeon.
Yeah, you had a good income.
I live below my means, so we had some savings, and so I have to give a lot of credit to to that profession. And so I think there's a lot of other people that I've met that they have even better ideas than I had, and they just don't have the funds to really explore that idea. And so I'm very thankful.
So your parents gave you a lot of support.
So my parents gave me a lot of support. They gave me the ability to kind of think outside the box. It was very much of they're how some parents are very driven, and they think that they know what's right for their kids, and sometimes they're very right.
Yes.
And we need that. We need that structure. We need those guardrails.
Yeah.
My parents, they were very strict on some things growing up. One thing that they were not strict on was kind of, if you go to college, they were not one of those parents that said, you have to go to college. You're going to college. That's assumed. I mean, so that was something I think that they just didn't assume that. They didn't force us, partly because they couldn't afford
to pay for it anyway.
To pay for it, or even to pay for a part of it. And so I think they felt awkward, like, hey, you have to go to college, but we can't help you in any way.
Yeah.
And so that was one thing. And then they've taken a very hands-off approach, I think, to I have 7 siblings, and so for all
have in common.
all the kids, yeah, right, exactly. For all the kids, they've taken a fairly hands-off approach, and so that I would say that was one thing, Art, that I think that was number one, that gave me the ability to kind of explore. Number 2 is my wife and Em, and I would say that this is probably a key to anyone that is kind of considering this. And part of the reason that I wanted just to be on the show today was just to kind of give some people, to inspire some people, give some people the confidence to explore something crazy like this. But I would say, making a transition in a career such that I did is really hard. If you don't have a supportive spouse, I just think that compounds it that much more. And so I would say one of the things to maybe consider is to, I think, and maybe this is not essential, but I would probably go pretty far to say that it's close to essential is having a spouse who supports that. And that's where M was. And she didn't get there overnight, but she got there, I think, over 5 years of kind of hearing me bitch and moan a bit,
Yeah. And I want to emphasize that too, for people that are thinking about a big transition, for 5 years, you've been considering this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's true with a lot of people. But we think, oh, I should think about this and I should have it solved in 6 months or a year.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually not the case. Transitions take a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And the data shows that those that are willing to stay in the liminal space the longest are the most satisfied coming out the other side of it. So it's sort of a paradox of back to what we talked about, something being hard and being willing to stick with it anyway. Sort of the longer we're willing to stick with the liminal space, the better the outcome is on the other side.
Right.
Instead of making rash, judgments
mm-hmm.
and then thinking it's going to be better, we often will end up back in the same situation we were in if we do a rash judgment, because then it doesn't work out and we end up back to where we were because that's what's comfortable and that's what we know.
Mm-hmm.
And we now need some safety. So I think it's just to know that, and that was only really the start of the transition, not the starting of the thinking about it, but it was 5 years of thinking and preparation, and then the courage to pull the plug and move across country at the same time, and your wife's starting over.
Mm-hmm.
But now you're actually into the transition, which as long as you're running this company, it will probably be never ending, because the company will evolve, which will require you to evolve
mm-hmm.
as well. So it'll be one, liminal space to the next in the business that you're in.
Mm-hmm. Right. Exactly. Yeah, that's interesting that you point that out, and I think that's so true, is that the decision seems to kind of almost come at a single point in time. But that's actually not the case. It's actually, in my case, maybe 5 years of a preparation for that decision.
Yeah, and I think that's true with most people. I know it was the case for me for many false starts, in a sense of making changes, and it's okay. And back and forth, and it's okay. Be willing to stick with it and keep trying to find the true north and doing the spiritual work and the inside job that needs to be done, so that, when we look back over our life, we can say, I fought a good fight, and not, I wish I would have.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
And I think, when I reflect back on it a little bit, of when I think of contrast kind of my experience as an orthopedic surgeon and my kind of experience now, is I like to say that I'm more fulfilled. I'm actually more intellectually stimulated right now.
That's really cool.
In medicine, certainly through medical school, residency, and into fellowship, you're soaking in all kinds of knowledge, right? You're learning. But as you, even though medicine is changing and there are new things, that learning kind of asymptotes as you go. And that was the other thing that I think I started to experience, Art, was this restlessness.
Mm-hmm.
I have this massive curiosity. I love learning about things. And I think I started feeling this restlessness, like, man, I wanted to learn more about something. I didn't know what that was, but I think I have this kind of this drive to learn about things. And I think that's helped me in this transition, when I didn't know anything about marketing. I didn't know anything about social media. I don't know anything about web development. But having that drive to, okay, let me at least learn enough to be dangerous.
Right. No, absolutely. And just to be clear, you also aren't one of those docs that already has an MBA or something. So this is really, you're learning your MBA as you're going.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's right.
Really cool.
So more intellectually stimulated, more fulfilled, less stressed. I think I actually work, at least in this chapter, I think I actually work a little bit harder. As a startup founder, this is a little toddler. I know it's not quite a baby anymore, but it's a toddler, and it needs lots of love and care. And at this point, I make less money.
Less stressed. Yeah, but what's the less stress part? I'm curious about that, because it seems like you're doing something you knew before.
Yes.
Okay. So now we come to it. So you're doing something that really juices you. Like we talked about before we hit the record button. Like, why am I doing a podcast a day after, 2 days after I moved into a house?
Yes.
Because I love doing it. I love doing it. Right. So this is really cool, man.
And
It's
I'll just
really
say
cool.
that comes out. I mean, as I've listened to some of your podcasts in preparation for today, and even just today, Art, you can just, I think that your love for this, you can feel. And so I guess I applaud this. I'm sure your listeners appreciate that, and they feel that too.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love the authentic conversation. I love the connection, and it's really an absolute pleasure for me. And I've heard that from many people that have done hundreds of podcasts. Like, wow, this is a different experience, and that's why I ask that a question even in the discovery call to say, hey, what would make it great for you? So that I'm not limited to 15 minutes like you were as an orthopedic surgeon, right? Mm-hmm. And then I can really try to dig into what I think can make a great experience for you and for the listeners both. What would you go back and tell your younger self, Matt, on the other side of this? Now, I know you're only 3 years into it, which is relatively new, but as we said, you were 5 years into it before you got into it. Mm-hmm. What would you go back and tell your 8-year younger self from the perspective you have now? Mm-hmm. Which doesn't mean you would do something different necessarily.
Right.
Just what would you want to tell yourself?
Yeah, exactly. I don't think I would do anything differently. Right.
Good for you.
I guess I would just tell my younger self, continue to have the courage to not feel boxed in by the expectations of kind of the world that we live in, right? Like you mentioned at the beginning, you spend a ton of time pursuing a certain career, a ton of money. You learn a lot about a little slice of the world, and right. Man, it is so hard to, I think, have the ability to say, hey, I'm gonna explore something new, something that I don't really know much about. And so I guess I would tell my younger self, continue to have the courage to explore that and continue to be curious. I think that was something that allowed me to even consider this. And I think that's something that's kind of continued to help me kind of in this new career, is that curiosity. And I, some of my father-in-law like to joke and tell me that you have a lot of intellectual security. Like, you don't really care about asking a dumb question, do you? I was like, no.
But that's the power of security. And guess what? I mean, that's, I can't remember her name right now, but the growth mindset. I can't remember her name that did all the research on growth mindset.
I'm blanking too, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to be the smartest person in the room, on a daily basis, be the dumbest person in the room. Mm-hmm. Because by asking the stupid question, which there are no stupid questions, then you're learning, you're curious, right? And then eventually you'll accumulate, more knowledge than somebody who wants to look good and wants to appear smart, but is afraid because they're going to look stupid to ask the question. They're not learning anymore. And that's the, trying to prove myself instead of improve myself.
Yes, right.
And that fits exactly with what you're saying about staying curious, like especially in your profession, which has so much upfront investment. But I thought, and most people think, and this is our culture drives this hard in us, is that especially professional careers, but life as a whole should always be up and to the right. You should always be climbing the mountain. And that's just bullshit. It's just wrong.
Right.
Because then what comes after the top of the mountain is you just die. And you're miserable a lot of the time. Whereas if you get some perspective, you've climbed up the mountain a little bit, you've got some perspective, maybe you've got some savings, you can look around and say, ooh, I want to go down to that river valley over there. And this was so hard for me. This was so hard for me to like walk down off that mountain.
Yeah.
Where I was somebody and I'm waving a big flag and, but to be willing to walk down and go explore something else, to be curious, to be, to live life and not expecting it always has to be up and to the right. Especially with career and money, which I know I bought into completely.
Right. Which we all do.
Yeah.
We all do.
And nothing wrong with either of those things, but to not, and I love that Jerry Colonna talks a lot about that in his book Reboot, but just to be willing to come back down and to see life as a series, especially in your 20s. Kevin Kelly talks about that too, the founder of Wired magazine.
Okay.
Like the more, what was his words? The more orthogonal you can be to the mainstream in your 20s, the more fulfilling your life will be in your 60s. He spent his 20s bicycling across China. He's in his 70s now without any legal right to be there making photography. And he went on to found Wired magazine and a whole bunch of other stuff, but he's totally off the map his whole 20s, So anyway, it reinforces that if somebody's in that situation and they're, have a successful career or they're just feeling like they don't know how long they can do this, even if it's, picking up the trash, or they're not sure how long they can do this. What tool would you give them? What advice would you give them? Something that's actionable that they can put pause on the podcast and take action on. One thing, simple. What advice would you give them, Matt?
Yeah, sure. I've kind of thought about this a little bit. One tool that's helped me that may help others is to start taking a frustration journal. And so it seems to be sometimes it's a bit of a superpower where rather than annoyances building up in your head and causing and making you feel more annoyed or frustrated, it can actually kind of help you, especially if you're kind of maybe considering doing something maybe not a total pivot like I did, but if you want to allow for some other intellectual stimulation or a side hustle or something like that, you can actually, sometimes it helps you brainstorm how a problem, an annoyance, a frustration can be solved. And sometimes it turns that frustration, that annoyance into an opportunity. And so it's a little bit of a different.
What's the process look like? So you say frustration journal. So you get your journal, and what's the cue? What do you write about?
Yeah, and so it can be something that since most of us have our phones with us most of the time, it's something that can be a bit spontaneous. So if you're getting you're annoyed about something. I think there's a little bit of if you just do it on your phone, then that's sometimes with you, and so you can do that spontaneously. The other thing that sometimes helps is a little bit like how we do thankful journals, gratitude journals, or something where you just you set aside 5 minutes in the morning, or sometimes in the evening once you're right before bed to kind of reflect back on the day. A lot. I feel like I've heard a lot of times.
And you just write like what was annoying to me today,
yes,
what frustrated me today, and you just write those things down.
You just write it down.
And what's the outcome that you found from using this tool? What was your realization?
So a couple things. One is that it allows me to better identify problems. I think some of these problems are just facts of life, and they're nothing to be solved.
Sure.
Sometimes it's helped me to see a pattern. And as you kind of look back on like any journal, you kind of look back, you can see, oh, there's a pattern to that annoyance. There's a pattern to that frustration. And so, and sometimes it's allowed you to better see kind of a solution. Right. I think that's number one. I think the second thing is and you might be able to help me explain this a little bit better, Art, but it's just that the act of identifying a frustration and then writing it down. I think there's some kind of therapeutic improvement by just, calling it what it is, and it allows your brain to move on or something. And again, I bet you could probably wrap this with some better, a better explanation, and feel free to do so. But I think that's
I think that's a great tool. So to write down, to notice what's bothering you as a way of gaining clarity, gaining sharpness, and I would add some maybe gaining distance as well.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. It allows you to kind of put a little bit of distance between it, so you don't feel quite as annoyed by it. Somehow by writing it down, naming it, it gives you it provides enough distance so that then there's a little insight. I feel like you can almost kind of look back over your shoulder.
Yeah, you have some perspective, be the observer. Right. And that is a tool that you use to help you to get into this transition that you're in now. Great.
Yeah.
So one last question. Where can people connect with you? If they want to find out about Towlos or about you, where's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Probably the easiest and most direct way is just to email me.
Okay.
Matt@towlos.com is my email address, matt@towlos, towlos.com. People are welcome to check out Towlos if they're, in the market for a trailer and they want the right trailer. That's just also at towlos.com, and then
Nice.
people can find me through there too. But
Awesome.
I've really enjoyed this conversation. I love the way that you are a deep thinker and a deep listener, and this has actually been really helpful for me, both personally and professionally.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. As I said, I love these conversations. I love your authenticity. I love your willingness to go all over the place that we did today, and the information that you shared and the perspective. It also helps me to learn and grow, and I really appreciate that. Thank you, Matt.
My pleasure. Great to be here.
Thanks. I can't wait to hear what action you are taking. Connect with me on LinkedIn or our website, lifeintransition.online, and let me know. Let a friend know too. It could be a huge encouragement to them and keep you on the track. Thank you so much for joining me today. Make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and it would mean a lot to me if you left a review and shared this episode with a friend. If you want to learn more about me and what I do when I'm not podcasting, please visit me at artblanchford.com. Thank you for listening. Together, let's make the most of life in transition.